Okay, welcome to the Four Horsemen News. In today's news, we got Democrat plan lets Obama run for third term. Before President Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected to his third and fourth terms in U.S. office, presidents had honored the limit established by George Washington that a president should serve no more than 2 terms. But now U.S. Republican Jose Serrano, Democratic New York, and a supporter of President Obama, has introduced House Joint Resolution 15 to repeal the 22nd Amendment and thus abolish presidential term limits. Serrano has introduced the bill before in 2003, 2009, 2011 with no success. HJR 15 would require a 2/3 majority vote in favor in both the House and Senate and a majority of support from state legislatures. With a debate over the fiscal cliff dominating most of the discussion on Capitol Hill of late, the legislation has managed to slip under the radar. It was introduced on January 4th and immediately referred to the House Committee on the Judiciary. Washington declined to run for a third term despite his wide popularity. Thomas Jefferson later foreshadowed the need for a formal limit when, in 1805, he wrote to John Taylor that he would follow Washington's example. 2 years later, he warned that without term limits, U.S. presidents would become like kings, which the colonists had fought a bloody war to escape. So with that said, we will see how this unfolds after this second term of President Obama. Have to wait and see. Okay, which brings me to the next news article is, what is the United Nations Organization for? The United Nations Organization was founded in 1945 to stop conflicts and provide a forum for debate, discussion, and dialogue for crisis management. It costs around $15 billion US a year to run, so it, in indexed terms, has already spent some $1,000 billion of taxpayers' money. And for what? The basic question is, what is the UNO for? If the answer is a repetition of the paragraph above, then the response is that it has failed miserably and that it is an absolute expensive waste of time and space. If it costs around $15 billion US annually to run, then it's getting on for $2 per person per year, every year, and for what? Did the United Nations Organization provide a basis for debate before the invasion of Iraq? No. Because the United States of America, the United Kingdom, and a handful of NATO countries simply decided to sidestep the organization, avoiding the UN Security Council because it would have voted against an invasion. The USA and UK therefore rendered it useless back in 2003. Since then, the UNO has spent an additional $150 billion doing exactly what? Did it stop the war in Libya? No. It stood back as the aforementioned demonic duo, now joined by France, to form the UK-US-France axis. France, UK, US ran amok, supporting terrorist groups on their own lists of proscribed groups, placing boots on the ground despite being bound not by UNSC 1970 and 73, 2011, and yet again breaking every law in the book. If the British Foreign and Commonwealth Secretary of State William Hague is still sitting smugly in his job despite breaking the law of his own country, then it becomes patently obvious that the United Nations Organization has as much clout as a squashed syphilitic slugs lying under a ton of sea salt. However, the slug doesn't spend $1,000 billion and certainly doesn't cost $15 billion a year. Let us now move to Somalia. This conflict started back in the early 1990s More precisely, in 1991, what has the United Nations done? What has the United Nations done to stop Al-Qaeda, apart from allowing Al-Qaeda into Iraq, from which it was barred by Saddam Hussein, and allowed Al-Qaeda into Libya, from which it was barred by Muammar al-Gaddafi? Did the United Nations stop the conflict in the Balkans, as the West moved in to stir up hatred among Croats, Bosnians, Serbs, Macedonians? Did the UNO stop Al-Qaeda moving into the Balkans? Did the UNO stop the Albanian terrorist movement Austria Clintere a Kosovo Libertarian Army, in other words, perpetrating civil unrest attacks in Kosovo? Did the UNO stop the illegal declaration of independence of the Serbian province of Kosovo and a subsequent illegal and inconsequential recognition by France, United States, and the United Kingdom poodle states? And what was the UNO done to prevent the bloodshed in Syria, where once again the United States, United Kingdom, and France Axis has sided with terrorists? It's sending in its own special forces and is making the conflict bloodier the more the Syrian government resists this demonic scourge. True, the UNO does some excellent humanitarian work, clearing up the mess it has failed to prevent. Yet, if it did its job properly in the first place, there would be no need for the fire engine. True, UN Women does some excellent work against gender violence and towards women's rights. UNESCO does a lot to protect World Heritage, register languages, and so on. Antonio Guterres does a superb job in helping refugees at UNHCR, and true, UNICEF does some excellent work in protecting and educating children. As for the World Health Organization, it is useful as a research facility and reasonably good at distributing medicines and mosquito nets. As a disease prevention organism, it is as risible as the crisis management arm after all. During the swine flu crisis in 2009, it limited itself to informing us as to what phase the new potentially fatal virus was reaching, as the World Health Organization sat back and watched influenza A, H1N1 go global trotting. Okay, if this is where the UNO is at after 67 years, then let us conclude it is a useful humanitarian organization, but would be rendered useless if an effective United Nations organization was to do the job the UN was set up to do in the first place. Let us be honest, if any manager of any company had spent $1,000 billion over 67 years providing the same sort of ineffective results the UNO has presented, then he or she would be crucified. As for the UNO, this year it is set to waste another $15 billion of our money. And with that, I conclude this portion for now. So it's just a good look at the United Nations and what it's all about, and is it any good? God bless.